Good evening, everyone. A pleasure to be here, and a very warm welcome to all of you to Fireside Chat on diversity drivers in Fintech. I'm Nagina Singh, and I'll be moderating the session today with a fantastic lady who will be in just a bit. But let me begin by stating a couple of very basic facts, I guess, which are known to all of us that there is a gender diversity problem in fintech today. In fact, if we could deep dive a bit, there are three main issues that are happening. One is a very simple, there are too few women in fintech companies. And of course, the related problem that fintech companies have very few female founders or female leaders. And of course, the other one that the problem that females are also underrepresented in the fintech user base. So it starts to look like an industry which is almost by the men, for the men, of the men. And we would like to have views from a very, very special guest today, whom I will introduce just in a bit. So, may I take the pleasure of introducing Nagina Singh. Hi, Nagina, and welcome to the session today.
Hi, Serena. I'm really, really honored to be with all of you this afternoon.
Super. Nagina, I'm going to rattle out a lot of things about you, your current and what you've done in the past. But if I do miss something, please do feel free to let us know. Um, Ms. Nagina Singh is the Executive Director, Human Resources of DBS Tech India. Over 25 years of experience in several HR functions, including relations, organizational effectiveness, design and change, talent acquisition, culture. Her experience spans across the banking and manufacturing industries, pharmaceutical and government sectors. As ED, HR for DBS Tech India, Nagina heads the organization's talent strategy, defines the build and strategy of talent, their engagement, and subsequent retention. She is passionate about integrated practical talent strategies that increase employee engagement and accelerate business results. Prior to this role, Nagina headed the leadership strategy deployment for DBS Bank India. During her tenure with DBS Bank India, Nagina spearheaded the Lakshmi Vilas Bank integration, established the HRRM target operating model, and heightened employee engagement. Prior to her career with DBS, Nagina has worked with organizations like Bharti AXA Life Insurance, Abbott India, Hero Honda, Owens Brockway, and PepsiCo. So once again, Nagina, thanks very much for being with us here.
Thank you, Serena. Can you hear me? Serena, can you hear me?
Yes, Nagina,
Oh,
we
you
can hear
froze
you
for
a
a
bit.
bit. So you froze for a bit, so I thought there was a lag in connection. But thank you so much. It's really humbling to hear these words from you. I always look at these sessions to be a two-way street. Apart from the audience leveraging a little bit of what I have gained in my career journey and trajectory, I look at it as a reverse mentoring opportunity for me. It's absolutely refreshing to be with young gender diverse talent across various facets of their life stages and professional stages, and I really look up to their views, their opinions. So I sincerely urge that everybody on this stream do your bit to participate. I would love to hear your thoughts. It's really refreshing. Takes me back good 20-25 years ago when I was entering the workforce. So please do make this active for me and for Serena, for us to nurture some of the points that you may bring about.
Thank you for that, Nagina. So I'm going to straight away launch into, asking a few questions that I'm sure are on the mind of all our audience today. And of course, my request to all the participants, please do put in your comments or questions in the chat box. We will pick them up towards the end of the conversation. And, I'm sure Nagina will be happy to share her views with all of you. So, Nagina, let us begin with understanding the recent rebranding that DPS has undergone and how the organization now aims to be more like a fintech.
So just to give you a bit of a background and everybody to get a bit of a background on DBS and our journey, many of you would have heard of the institution, and then also the fact that we are known for world class technologies. So being fintech for us is nothing new. We've been fintech from, right at the onset, when we started looking at providing banking solutions to our customers and stakeholders in a more digital, more technology oriented process system basis. I think, and that's what got us our banking a technology license. And DBS Technology Services India Private Limited is one of the two development centers for DBS world over, offshore centers which provide technology solutions, whether it is to our banking products or whether it is to our customers. So all of this was conceptualized, put in place with the intent to service the customer and the stakeholder better. But I think what our rebranding does is it's just a nomenclature change to bring alive what we stand for, which is we want to be a world class engineering company that wants to attract the talent, and not only talent with that skill set, but actually give them meaningful work which they are able to apply their skill sets upon. So I think what this brand rebranding is going to do for us is that it is going to bring alive all the work that we had set for ourselves when we came to India in 2016. And guess what? The change started with Indian entity as recent as in May, when our CEO from the group was visiting us, and he was just talking about how we perceived as an employer in Hyderabad. And that's where there was feedback. It's DBS Asia Hub 2, and Asia Hub 1 happens to be, there's no one, but Asia Hub happens to be in Singapore. So this is number 2, as in series 2, and that sort of compromised on the work that we stand for. So I think it'll help us identify who we are, who we want to attract, and what we want to make of the solutions that we are providing to our customers and our stakeholders. So I think it is going to do a lot of good packaging effort to what we already stand for. And that will cut across our talent attraction, management, engagement, and even create a space in the technology companies in Hyderabad and areas in India where centers like us exist.
Sure. And of course, it's absolutely a step in the right direction. And whether it's a small step or a big leap, I think is what will probably unfold, in the next some time. Very specifically now coming to gender diversity and, the aspects of gender diversity as they exist. What have you observed in the fintech space? And also, related question, what is DBS going to be doing to help solve this problem?
Sure. So, Serena, I've been now being a diverse candidate myself, I think, and I took naturally to the subject. I've been, working on the topic or trying to have organizations work on diversity, increase it, build inclusive practices for as long as I've been in the workforce. So you can say that I've been acquainted with this for over 24 years across various industries. And this, let me tell you that this issue doesn't only exist in the fintech space. I've experienced that in manufacturing. I've experienced that in financial services, and it is getting better in every space, and specifically in fintech as well, because the last 2 years in COVID, where organizations went ahead and did a lot of stuff around upskilling, reskilling, giving people flexible options, enabling women to come back after their life stage decisions. So these are all levers which are helping it increase. But I think it all starts from also the choices that we make as women when we decide what career we want to choose. And some of it is related to what you called out in the beginning, that it is a man's world. You don't have founders in the term of diversity, which is the case in any other industry as well. I think it is about our interests also when we start or embark on a career. And I used to face that as a perpetual problem, where in financial services we used to struggle with people joining finance in terms of gender diversity. That's because you don't have so many women chartered accountants, and you don't have so many CFAs in women. And to have a woman CFO was like precious catch by any organization. Similarly, in the fintech space, I do see that this will have to be a complete ecosystem change, where apart from the organizations playing their part, which is what I stated, I think it is in our own hands also to make those career decisions which will help us pick up an industry which is going to be so much future, future for us, future for our children, and future for the entire world. This is one industry which is here for keeps, and we've seen We didn't need a COVID to tell us how important this industry is. So I think it's about us also making these choices. Needless to say that the organizations play a part. I do see that, it is getting better. Organizations range between 25 to 30. We ourselves have an aspiration to be 30% diversity. We've just gone ahead and hired fresh talent from campuses, about 514 odd of them. 50% of them are gender diverse candidates. We are making, but getting in talent which is diverse is one aspect. But I think the other aspect is how inclusive are we making our workplace for this talent to feel included. So I think when people say D&I, I always correct them and say, please say I&D. It is inclusion first and diversity then is incidental in my mind. So I think we will never get to a 50% mark just yet. But I think to wrap it up, we make the right career decisions. We pick up what is future for industry, for ourselves, and for the space, and do away with some of the stereotypical things that engineering is for boys, finance is for boys, women are teachers, and they are more human resource practitioners. I think we'll have to break the shackles, and the rest is for the organizations to play their role. When we have diverse talent enter our organizations, we make them feel at home, provide them the skills, and keep them going with the pace of the organization.
So, I particularly liked your I&D, right? Inclusion first, and then absolutely diversity will follow. Resonate with that fully. So, in terms of DBS as an organization, and with everything that you are now leading and working on, how are you seeing this help solve some of this problem? I know you've talked about your campus hiring, where you did almost a 50% gender hiring, as I heard. What else are other policies and other, if I may use the word very provocatively, a fair practice, which you think could also be adopted by other people, and we could look at organizations being more on the forefront of this, rather than it being one other thing to be included in the agenda, so to speak, right?
Yeah. So, Serena, we've got the bouquet of things, right? From mentoring to speed mentoring to reverse mentoring to tech mentors to women in tech. We are engaging in the external forum as we are, as you see today, is one example of such thing. But I think our efforts are more towards not making diversity a over convoluted agenda. Why should we talk about so much about gender diversity? Why should it, when 50% of your customer base happens to be gender diverse, why is it still a boardroom conversation? I think for us, it is imperative that we break those mindsets, bring the business case alive to everybody who is a stakeholder in this agenda. It is, I mean, and India per se as a market needs to graduate out of just talking gender. I mean, we are forgetting very important elements of diversity like perspective, and that perspective could come from different backgrounds. And I've seen that myself, having made so many frequent changes in industry. I think that brings a lot of perspective. Organizations need to value that. Why gender diversity? So I think the big erosion for us would be, apart from what any standard organization does in terms of programs and development opportunities, and having certain roles which they will consciously hire for gender diverse talent. I think the big one for us is to break the mindset and stop people from talking about it. The more we're talking about it, we are seemingly coming across as there is an issue. Why should there be an issue when it's a gender diverse customer base? I think that's where it all starts from. So I think my efforts and our efforts in DBS are more towards bringing alive the practical issues this agenda has versus the warm and fuzzy programs and the mentorship and so on and so forth. Those enable the individual to an extent, but they don't create an equitable organization unless people's thinking changes and unless we stop giving it more disproportionate amount of attention that we are to it. I mean, it's normal. It's men and women in every path of life, in every journey of life. So why should a workplace be different? For my problems, answer to my to this problem statement is as simple as that. The rest is all icing on the cake. But I think the core is for people to acknowledge the fact that this is not an issue. This is not a problem.
So, very well pointed out. Absolutely, Gina. The fact is that this has been spoken about for so very long, right? I think I'm going back to my career also as a banker. There would not be any board meeting or any senior level meeting within any unit that you were not discussing how you could, well, take this forward. And when I say agenda, I don't mean just the conversation, but really doing practical things. However, in spite of that, have seen very, very slow progress in the last many years. Um, I'm not saying that there isn't a change. There absolutely is a change. Just the fact that there are practical things happening, to make this a reality is proof enough. But I'm just going to read out a couple of things that I have, picked up as just some facts across various resources available on the internet. So, fintech continues to be the leading sector for venture funding also in 2022, with one more $1 billion invested in the space in 2021. But again, 90% of that funding went to male founders. And I think again a question which I'm posing for maybe views from a lot of the audience, but definitely for an opinion if you do have. What would happen if that needle could move closer to a more equitable mark of whether it's a 40% or a 30% or a 50%? We can define that. So what is that as an aspect that you could comment on? And just another quick point I'll make before I hand over the mic to you. And despite raising far less, female founded teams continue to outpace and produce higher return rates than their male counterparts. Now, I always feel a little, well, shaky about saying these things because it's not really a competition. I mean, I want to just clarify that it's not a competition between men and women, but it's really about finding, as I said, a fair, equitable space for everybody, considering what we've seen in the past. So BCG reports that for every $1 invested in a female founded business, the return is more than double than that of male founded businesses, with returns of 78 cents to the dollar compared to 31 cents to the dollar. So that's very interesting piece of news and numbers that I picked up. Anything that you'd like to add on that? Anything you'd like to
So
share?
I would not comment so much on the statistics in the business case. There's been enough and more studies in business case done by external DNI specialist organizations saying that there is a business case where women are more diligent, they are more focused, and so on and so forth. I don't want to bring any of those gender. I want to be gender agnostic about the situation and probably throw the problem back at us versus the male counterparts. To your point of more funding going to men, I think the problem is as real as the base for women asking for that funding may be small. It brings me back to the earlier point that not too many of us are venturing into that domain by nature. We would prefer to have a structured 9 to 6 job. We probably would have to stop gap at every life stage, which is reality, which is absolutely reality. And that does that no equality in the gender space is not coming on the back of taking away some realism that women have to live with at various stages of their life. I'm definitely not a propagator of that, but the base is minimum. You are sourcing from which is, as it is, a very minuscule base. How many in our group, in our cohort, you would see are women who put their hand up and said they are going to go out and do some venture which is going to be high risk, high return? And that's because historically we have grown up like that. Our life stages along the way normalize us. So brings back my earlier point that it is not a question of the divide being unequal. It is the question of the reality being where there aren't enough in the space. So we need to consciously, as time goes by, and it is, as your experience says, and mine does as well, over the 24-25 years, things have evolved a lot from what used to be one or two. I joined Hero Honda Motors Limited in the manufacturing setup. I was the only woman on the floor, and there was a common toilet. There was not even a for men and women kind of toilet. So from there we have come a long way, but I think the ball is more in our court to sort of go ahead and pick up alternative career choices which are away from what has been safety net. And we're seeing women become pilots. It's probably used to be 0.001% 50 years ago. It became 10%, maybe will be 2025. We are seeing that then, but I think the inequality is not because men get it over women. I think the inequality is there are no enough women in some certain spaces, and that's a reality.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you. What could you share from your personal experience, in terms of your career as a woman with DBS, and any experiences specifically that come to mind in terms of, how your growth has been and what are the challenges you faced and what you did about them?
So I'd probably, extend it beyond DBS and be a little bit of philosophical, and you can tie that up towards the end as to what my messaging for all the young ladies on this call would be. One clear message was, whether it is DBS or any other organization that I worked for, I took my career into my own hands. And I did it on the back of, not always vertical growth, but I balanced it between gaining horizontal experiences and then getting the vertical growth as and when there is. It came on the back of a lot of realism and taking charge. A good 25 years ago, in an organization, when I started actually my working life with PepsiCo, it was a man's world. More than that, it was an accelerized world. I was neither both. I wasn't a man and I was not from Acceleri, which is the mecca for HR. So you can imagine how much of headwinds I would have had to face. But I was very clear that, there will be stages in my life where I'll have to take certain life stages. And I did a fair few, motherhood was just one of them. I took, life stage decisions at the time of my parents' health. I took life stage decisions when the family was living in two different countries and so on and so forth. So it isn't that I haven't done all of that, but I have clearly worked with the premise that nobody is going to give me a career on a platter. Even if I was a rocket scientist, nobody would do it. I would need to carve my way. And I think I mastered the art of saying no very well at home and very well at work as well. And to everyone on the call, I'd like to mention that, career is measured on two counts, which is both horizontal and vertical. And talking of specifically of DBS, 3 years in the bank, I may not have grown to heading the HR for the bank, but I grew a lot in terms of getting horizontal growth when I worked on the Lakshmi Vilas Bank acquisition and merger. Subsequently, this move to Hyderabad is also is a growth in terms of, experiencing a different sector, getting independent charge of the HR team, and really working in the technology space, which is future for DBS. But it has come on the tenets of taking charge yourself. There is no soft landing, there are no free lunches, and we need to, prioritize at each stage of our life that it cannot be either or. It has to be both your life stages, yourself, and your work. And if you're able to do that balance in a balanced manner, I think everything else is incidental.
I particularly resonate with you a lot on this whole aspect of prioritization, right? We all have a life cycle. Sometimes phases are quite similar, but the timing of when it happens, and especially what's happening, in terms of our workspace or the industry at that point of time becomes also very relevant. So, I can absolutely understand where, whether it's parents' health or it's kids' educations or their exams, or it's, sometimes the family time that you so need and want, at certain phases, that you need to take those decisions and do that. One of my favorite mantras that I do like to live by is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? So one is your ability to say no when you're not able to do something which is going beyond your capacity and, let's say, capability at a point of time, but also tapping into the resources and the environment around you to ensure that you get that, support and that kind of, bandwidth to be able to create the prioritization that you want to create.
And
So
I think that's
absolutely.
a very valuable point, Serena, and it missed my mind. And I've experienced it firsthand when I was working and living in Australia. You don't have the benefit and the privilege of your mother-in-law, your mother, or your parents, or any relatives live close by to basically manage your home priorities from your, share simple things as your child. And those countries are very clear cut in how much leave you get. And at that time, there was no work from home. I was in a manufacturing setup, you couldn't work from home. So I had to divide my week in terms of the resources I had. I would probably, Indian community neighbor have pick up my son twice a week from school with along with their children. Twice a week I'd probably leave him in daycare after school, and make it a point that I wind up by about 6:30. And the fifth day, which is a Friday, I'd probably, you know, do half a day from office and half a day from home so that I could bring him from school. So it is all about leveraging whatever your ecosystem has. And I think there is no harm in being shameless about it wherever you can, because if we think we are all super humans, we are not. No matter how we try, we may be a cutting edge versus the others who are homemakers thinking that, we are women of the world. But guess what? We also have our limitations. Everybody has their limitations. So I think there is no harm in, being resourceful It should be taken as positively. There is no, all you'll get is a no as an answer. There's always an alternative to that.
There is, I mean, I also feel that sometimes the whole definition of work life balance and how you uh, kind of perceive it for yourself becomes very important. And we have a lot of young people who are getting into the corporate world, into working. There was also a time, honestly, which I remember from my early years of working, which is 2024 or 22 years ago, is that work life balance was about work. Integrated into it. So, the whole focus on what needs priority at a point of time is what I'm also hearing you say, and again, agree with that completely. Maybe I can ask you one last question, and then we'll move on to the audience questions. I see quite a few nice comments and questions, so I would be very happy to read those out.
Sure.
So, a community like Fintech Acers, which helps address such current issues, whether it's on show or it's on senior women in decision making positions, etc. Um, how do you feel that DBS's association as the anchor organization with our community here will be helpful, and how can people make the most use of this kind of a community?
Sure. Let me just step back and give some examples from the various industries that I worked in. So when I was worked with PepsiCo, it was basically the consumer that was shaping the industry. There was a needle movement from sugary drinks to health and wellness drinks. That's where we conceptualized fruit juices and Quaker oats and so on and so forth. When I moved into insurance, the obligation was with the industry to shape the consumer, because all this while we were selling our products as investment products and not as protection products. Now when I move to the tech space and I see that the employee life cycle management of any employee is 2 years, 2.5 years, which is, it is entry to exit, and people find greener pastures and go away and do their own things. There's somebody paying more, there's probably a better brand, or there's better work, or whatever it is, better training, and it's very fluid. So I would really look at industry in the technology space shape the stakeholders, along with forums like this, and organizations like this, who will help us nudge the industry to actually make it more sustainable from a talent management standpoint, where it is our obligation to actually also work with an industry and organizations like this to carve what should be the norms or the operating rhythm of this industry. It forever cannot be 30%, 35% industry which is just body shopping and is creating seats in various technology centers, doing the job and moving on. We have to sustain this industry. So organizations like Fintech Acers will go a long way in that journey for us, where I see that every speck in the ecosystem, which is industry, organizations like yourself, and our stakeholders, which is all these women on the call who would potentially be our employees or employees of other technology companies, come together and look at the long term of the and the future of this industry, versus just I'm doing interesting work. So I think it is the obligation is in our hands to shape the industry.
Thank you. That was indeed, a pleasure to listen to, and thank you very much for all your inputs. So, for all our participants, if you haven't yet joined the community, please do. There are many more conversations like this that you will have access to, that you will absolutely benefit from. So, the team will post a link. Do use this opportunity to absolutely enroll for the community. And let me now just go to a few comments, and I'll, some aspects, of course, you've already picked out on Nagina, but in case there's anything additional you would like to add, do feel free to do that. Um, Yashwini, thank you for your comment that DBS is a visionary and pioneering, uh, So fantastic. And the question from Jay Desai is, how do you think fintechs will help in financial inclusion of women? I think already been answered to a great extent, by you, Nagina. But anything else that you'd like to share as
So I would continue to work in the space of inclusion and cultivating gender diverse candidate, encouraging. It's about community development, as I say. When I used to work in the plant, In some of our plants in the Punjab area specifically, and not Pune or West so much, we had a dearth for talent for women not being coming out of their homes to work, even if it contributed. So we went and did huge community development drives, and I think there is a need for us to even partake as a, now aiming to be a real tech giant in the space and a world class engineering, to actually do our bit towards community development. So I would also take it a step beyond my organization and actually work in areas to encourage women to take this space up as careers.
Sure. There's a very interesting question from Shambhavi, which is saying, how does DBS compete with fintech giants? And I'm just wondering, from a competition point of view, where I'm assuming it's related to talent, acquisition and talent retention. But if there's something else, I'll put that on the comments. Anything from you on that, Nagina?
So I would, be a little. I'll approach this question a little differently. So we clearly don't want to be a fintech giant. If you look at DBS as a group as well, we operate in key 6 markets and 18 international centers. So, whilst we're a multinational, largely Asia led, but we're not a 200 country operation. Similarly, our technology solutions are not scale, but they are the kind of work that we are doing. That is why world class engineering. So, it may be that our ambition is not to be a tech giant, but our ambition is to be extremely good at what we do, which may as well be niche. So, I would, when I talk to talent or when I attract them, I would not talk to them about what skills they bring to the table, but I talk to them about how we will optimize those skills. Even if I look at basic skills in the technology space, one person with the same skills is playing the role of an aggregator and is just iterating a product, and the other one is creating a product. So I want to bring that differentiation out to the workforce, that it is, we will optimize these skills differently. The quality of work that you will do will be different. It may not make us as big as a JP Morgan Chase or a Goldman Sachs or HCL or TCS, but we want to be very good at what we do, and our talent strategy, attraction, retention, management would be along the quality of work that we offer them, more than anything else, and what they do
Yeah,
with the skills that they do.
absolutely. I mean, I used to always think of an employee's relationship with the organization having, again, multiple aspects and dimensions. And what makes me really stick to an organization, one, sure, is money, as everybody would say, the compensation I get, but definitely the learning that I have in the environment that I'm in, the growth opportunities, that I may get, and also the ability to create some value and be able to contribute to the organization. As human beings, that's a big need in us, which we may not realize, or it may not be so explicit. But this ability to be able to do something which carries, a more legacy kind of a flavor is a very inherent need in us as human beings. So glad to hear that, from a DBS perspective. Couple of comments again. Yashwani saying change the mindset is the major one for sure. Another question is that, where you
On
mentioned
that,
inclusion.
I would just like to, throw in another perspective. Change the mindset is as much in our hands as it is in our male counterparts' hands. And we were discussing yesterday when we were doing a little bit of a prep for this session that when we come back to the workforce after various life stages, we do think that we should be given a soft landing, we should have the same commensurate growth, we should, so it's about demystifying some of the misnomers that we also come with. Mindsets only change when our male counterparts see us working in the capacity that we choose to work in. If we have come back after a life stage and we want to go a little slow, then let's be real in our minds that you know this advantage is going to come on the back of probably part-time work, part-time pay may hamper our growth for the next 2-3 years. We'll catch up and come back. And if we come back with the die-hard attitude that I've done my life stages, they are behind me, now I'm back in the workforce, then we are back in the workforce as equal to our men counterparts. So I think some of this mindset, it's a 360-degree approach in my mind. So it isn't that HR practitioners, myself, or thought leaders like Serena can change this, or organizations can take a magic wand and do, okay, everybody, there's a poster, everybody's mindset has to be positive towards diversity. No, it has to be our day-to-day actions which will change the mindset. It is every step that we take, and each one of us.
Very well said. Very, very well said. Nupur said, she said, where you said inclusion comes before diversity. So, how do you make your gender diverse employees feel more included?
So it's the small things that I talked about. Like for those of my friends who do watch IPL, you see there is so much of rat zat around branding, around cheerleaders, around bidding, that cricket is incidental. Similarly, if we get our inclusion practices where we actually follow them in the letter, intent, and the spirit, and that may sound theoretical, but I think every small change that the male counterparts and even the female counterparts in the organization make towards creating more inclusivity, then in my mind we won't, as recruiters or talent acquisition folks, have to stress so much on getting the diversity numbers in. People will put their hands up and come in, and there's, apart from creating programs and having flexible hours and part-time work and work from home and all of those, which I think now is no longer a unique selling proposition thanks to COVID. But I think it's the intent and the spirit, where when you, and I'm sure that you all know it as well, when you walk in an organization, you get to know what the organization intends to do. So I think it's changing that culture and that mindset that will create some of those inclusive practices. Programs and all that are mechanisms in my mind. It's, there's always a hardware and a software issue. In my mind, the software issue is the programs. The hardware is where people need to actually stop talking about it and think, well, what's, if she's a woman, why can't she come to work? I mean, what's the big dogged issue around that? Why are we overdoing the topic to death? And that's the
Yeah.
reason in Indian context we have not been able to move out of the gender diversity fray for as many as 20, 25 years. I used to lead DNI for PepsiCo. I did that in AXA 5 years ago. I'm trying to carve some space in every organization that I work for, but the story is still same.
Oh, absolutely. Was it difficult for DBS to get that 50% female candidates from campuses, or how difficult was it? This is the question from Sadia.
We took a conscious call. If all things being equal, and on the back of meritocracy, we went in with an agenda, and we talked a lot about the inclusive practices, so that there is a stickiness from the prospective candidate base as well. So it was a conscious effort. Yes, thankfully, the campuses that we targeted had a good gender mix. So it is heartening to see that women are entering into that space, and we did not go to tier one colleges. We started our journey with tier two to be more realistic. And it is heartening to see that you have women come into the space. And I think the next leg to all of this would be to also DBS contribute towards encouraging women to take up these careers, which is something that I'm going to seriously think of, and maybe with Fintech Acers and other organizations work towards some community development initiatives in order for more and more women to take up careers in the technology space. And once you, it's all about my earlier point, you have to have a sizable base to choose from. If that base doesn't exist, then there is, the problem is of a different kind.
And that is also exactly one of the questions you're saying. Is the user base of fintech really as gender diverse as we think it is? And do enough women really have access to fintech payments and the related pieces? So that's a question from Shubhra.
And again that the obligation, I say, is in our hands. In my days in AXA, when we used to talk of protection, who we used to target when we used to do for community development, we used to target the gender diverse, the female of, or the wife or the spouse or the female partner of the household, because she was responsible for taking the financial decisions. So I think it is in our hands to enable the financial decision provider, even if the person is a homemaker, and show them the advantages that you have with tech enabled banking. And I think then it's a journey. If my mother can use WhatsApp at the age of 84 and go on YouTube, I think getting fintech across to our gender diverse customers and population is no big thing, because it comes on the back of a lot of benefits, and for the use of a better word, a lot of ease.
Hi, can you hear me? Apologies, I think there's something happening with my link, but we're on the last question here, Nagina, and I'm combining two questions. So one is here from Haseen saying, "What is the unique fintech product that DBS offers, and what is your view on the future of banking?" And a related question that I saw just above from Manvi saying, "What are your strategies for the upcoming recession, and did the bank envision it?"
Okay. So we offer a lot of tech-enabled solutions, not only restricting to process improvement in banking, but also, some digibank, our digital banking was conceptualized in India soon after the technology space was set up. So there's lots, and I'm not in a very good technical capacity to talk about them. The second leg to that question was, Serena, can you just refresh that for me, please?
Yes, that with the recession that is upcoming, how does the bank envision handling that, and what are your strategies?
So we at DBS live with one philosophy: that jobs may go, people don't. So there's a huge impetus, and we saw that in the 2 years in COVID, a huge impetus on upskilling, reskilling, and if the world is moving more towards technology, we had a whole lot of branch banking tellers where we moved from having, physical tellers to virtual tellers. You just go and log in a machine, a face would come up and talk to you. Person could be sitting in Malaysia, servicing you in India or Hong Kong or whatever it is. But we ensured that these people get to do something else. So that ways we are very, very clear, and we've had enough and more economic or pandemic related crisis to establish the format for us, where we are very agile and very nimble to quickly take control of the situation and start working around. Yes, the jobs are going, but people will not. And recession in the banking space, if it is that, if it comes, and we hope it doesn't, we are pretty prepared in terms of our format and our blueprint there, which is that we then quickly move into find alternatives, have people do meaningful, quickly skill them up, change their roles, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. So thank you very, very much for that, Nagina. And before I invite you for your last comments and we close the session today, I'm not going to. There are a couple more questions, but maybe those can be answered offline. I'll request Shivranjani to take care of those. But if we have gone through the last couple of years with such an unprecedented and unexpected event like the pandemic, then I'm sure that when there are other more well, not expected, but what we've seen earlier, like recessions happen, we will be able to deal with that. And when I coach individuals, and especially when I did it over the last couple of years, the questions that used to be, when is this going to get over, my suggestion to people used to be to turn that around to saying, whenever it gets over, what is the time, and when it gets over, how am I going to deal with my life and what I have to do with it? So you take back the control, as you said, within your own selves, whether it's your career, it's your life, or it's your children or family, and that's how you move on. So last comments, closing remarks from you, Nagina. I would like to thank everyone for being here, of course.
So my parting message to everybody would be, amalgamation of all the snippets that you've heard me say. Be bold, be sincere to yourself, balance the out. I've been at that side of the spectrum as well, where I was a die-hard professional and nothing meant to me. It was the hard paces of life that I learned that it's an equilibrium between your personal, professional, and your family and your work, which all go hand in hand. So do the balance, learn the art to say no, and always, walk in with the premise of realism when you walk to the workplace. That is what I meant when I said be true to yourself. The ecosystem can be enabled, can be nudged, policies, principles can be put in place. But let me admit it, after being in the game for 25 years, it's a harsh place out there. Even today, when I walk out of home to go to office, there are six priorities of the home which keep tingling in my head. Oh shit, did I organize that? Did I look after that? Oh, that needs to be done. That will never go away. I think it's about just taking charge of your career, being realistic about it, and I think just being bold to the situation. All this industry talk, all organizations' efforts will only, massage some of these issues for us, but these issues will not go away.
All right. So, with that, thank you everyone who's joined us today. And please do remember to sign up for the community. You've seen the link in the chat. And Nagina, once again, thank you very much for being with us today, being so candid and open and challenging with your thoughts in terms of how we could definitely bring a change in the way we think and the mindset change as we spoke about. Thank
Thank
you
you
once
very much,
again.
Nagina, for having me, and thank you very much, VS, Shiv, and Arnav. And it's always a pleasure to have people give their inputs. I always take it as a learning experience for myself. So hang in there, do what you got to do, and it's an equitable world.